Well, hello. Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip,
And I'm CJ.
and it is Monday in the Riv. And we got, as usual, a whole bunch of things to talk about. I'll start by mentioning your flush. If you haven't read it. It's very good as usual, but it's like the War and Peace edition, so it's pretty long. Uh, and I thought it was a little. I thought it really brought something to mind when I began to read it. We lost two more people. They always say they go in threes. We
Yep.
lost Richard Urban, and now we have Charlie Auclair and Judge Shahadi. And I thought I don't know if anybody else saw the irony in what you wrote, CJ, that you were talking about him coming from Lebanon when he was 12 and working on the Save Lebanon program with President Jimmy Carter. And that was a long time ago when we had the peanut farmer as the
That's right.
president. And Lebanon still hasn't been saved, unfortunately, despite the efforts. And you know why? Politics and people. Uh, I wanted to just mention that fact because, and then of course, in your flush, you did cover it. We did have a shooting on Rock Street. And again, remember, there's no crime in Fall River. I'll let you kind of touch a little bit on that, and because I'm going to segue into another issue and just talk a little bit about your flush because you covered a lot of ground in that thing.
Yeah, it was it's no longer than any other one, which is kind of odd. It's, only a few more lines possibly. But as for the shooting, it was on Rodman Street, not Rock Street. Um, and that was on Friday night at 11:30 approximately. And there's still no suspects and no one's in custody. The victim hasn't been named, and he got shot in both his legs. But remember, we don't have bullets flying all over the city, so we're a safe city. Just because you got a bullet in your house doesn't mean bullets are flying all over the city, right, Paul? Isn't that what you said? So it makes it very interesting. And one of the things that you have to look at when you consider the fact that this man has no plan to attack crime, none whatsoever. He's asked or ordered his police department to not reveal the number of crimes that are going on, the number of arrests, the number of shootings. He's trying to make the city look so safe because if it gets out that the city isn't safe, which it's kind of hard to hide, Paul, um, he may not get the people he wants from the North Shore to come down here. The problem with that is when people from the North Shore get here, if they decide to come here, they may decide to turn around and go back. Because if they bring children with them, they're going to find out, oh, this is one of the worst school systems in the state. Get them out of here. Or when they come in and they find out that there's nothing to do at night, they're going to say, hey, get out of here. I'm not going to be driving to Providence into Boston because I'm leaving Boston. Why would I want to drive back to Boston for a night out? I would have stayed in Boston and be able to go out. This is the problem. Plus, we don't have an effective public transportation system here in Fall River. It's not effective. It changes hours on a regular basis. It changes routes. It goes down side streets. There was once a time when the public transportation system here in Fall River, they only used the main streets, Robeston, Bedford. Then they'd go over to Second Street. Get that bus would get there from a Second Street. It would go to South Main Street, or it would go to Plymouth Avenue, go up to Stafford Road and over Stafford Road, to South Main Street to Broadway, down Broadway. That was the way it used to work. Now we're going down side streets and they come up Plymouth Avenue and go down Warren Street, and they're going here, there, and everywhere, and they're causing more traffic problems. And in the winter, if there's snow, they can't get by. Boston's public transportation system, while it's ineffective, it's at least running at 2 and 3 in the morning. Fall River isn't. Fall River stops at what, 9 o'clock at night, if it even goes that long. So we need to look at what's going on. Where's Paul's plan? And there isn't one. And when
Well,
I look at when I look at both candidates, I got to say at least one of them has some experience in doing this, while the other one has no experience in doing nothing but walking the halls and high-fiving the students, going, "Yay, Cougs! Yay, Cougs!" That's not teaching. That's not effective leadership. That is not effective management. It's nothing but give me a high five and you're my best friend and I'm going to do things for you. And when you hear people say that the reason why I'm going to vote for Paul is because my son or my daughter had them when they were in Durfee and he was a nice guy. Guess what? There are a lot of people out there that are nice guys. There's a lot of people out there running for city council right now that are nice guys, but they're not getting a chance. So if you're going to vote for somebody because they're a nice guy, go give the nice guys that are running for city council a good chance and get rid of the deadbeats we have now. It's time for change, and people want change. And I know that. And that's basically what the Weekend Flush was all about.
Well, it was very good, but it's amazing, and we'll remind everybody that our show is not scripted. And you gave me the perfect segue with this by talking about people from the North Shore. Well, number one, the first thing that people who can afford these kind of rents look at are education and crime, and we're abysmal in both. So, if they come down here, I guess Paul never thought they could actually go to Somerset, Westport, surrounding areas, and everything in between. Because everybody's going to come to Fall River because, when you have an addiction, in order to cure that addiction, you have to first admit that you're an addict. And in Fall River, our political people are excuse addicted. It's always an excuse. And that segues me into one of our viewers said that my characterization of the Flint was egregious because I said it looked like Fallujah. Well, I drive up Pleasant Street every day. I grew up in the Flint. I've lived fundamentally my entire life in the Flint. My home is in the Flint. I remember when the Flint, starting from Stafford Square, had, let me see what I can remember. You can interject, CJ, if you can. If we start at Stafford Square, because I'm not talking about the new expanded Flint. I'm talking about the Main Street area. The Pleasant Street is the main street of the Flint. When every store was full. And let's look at restaurants. We started with the Chuck Wagon, which is now a used car lot across from the U-Haul it, where Leo Pelletier's first job slinging hamburgers. Then it was Ed's. Then it was Zeke's. Then there was Mark Hughes and Long's and Grace Wong's and Bashara's, and I forgot the name of the Chinese restaurant on Webster Street because we never got that far. It might have been China City. But we're
Yes,
already up around 10. And Mylan's restaurant, I forgot Mylan's. So we had Middle Eastern cuisine, comfort food. We had 2 five and dimes. We had a clothing store. We had a supermarket, the Pleasant Supermarket. And for you who think that that was egregious, what is egregious to me is that our government has allowed that and the rest of this city to erode for all these years, and their excuse was, we're 335th in education. You think they would be pissed off about that? You think they would say, we're going to throw everything at this thing and educate our children? You know what they say? Well, there's 16 cities and towns that are worse than us. What are you complaining about? There's more, there's not more crime proportionally, but they'll say, well, Boston's homicide solve rate isn't as good as ours. It doesn't make any difference. We're not supposed to be in the top 10 in crime. We're supposed to be in the bottom 10, and that's what we should shoot for. And to say that it was an egregious representation, have you been on Pleasant Street? I went up there and I looked myself again to see if maybe I was hallucinating. And you know what I saw coming from Stafford Square up? A U-Haul, a car lot, a Oriental market, which obviously yuppies from the North Shore aren't going to frequent, a tiny little thing that caters to a particular group. An auto repair place. They don't take their Mercedes to an auto repair place on Pleasant Street. Bar room. 7-Eleven, laundromat, bank, and then all empty storefronts. I think Fallujah has as many. Because I'll tell you what, you and I have a completely different definition of egregious. Egregious is having people that sat in those city council seats for 20 years. Some of them, like Kilby, who was on the school committee before he got on there, accepting being ranked 335th out of 351 cities and towns in Fall River. And we just had an incumbent, Shelley Pereira, say, the answer is we need more money. Why? To give us more assistant superintendents? To give us more pay raises? For Paul Cougar to now make 8 supervisors instead of 4 when we had 1 and he reorganized and made 4? That's egregious. It's egregious to ignore the crime in the city of Fall River and pretend that 55 shootings, now 56, and Rodman, Rock, I was probably looking at another one because I was looking at the list and I saw the R in front of it. But 56 shootings since January is acceptable? Is it acceptable for a mayor to say, well, there will be people displaced, and assume that we're going to get people in here to replace them that are going to come to a city like this? I grew up in this city, and it sickens me to walk on Pleasant Street now. It's disgusting. There's nothing there. You know, I mean, how clueless can you be? You think somebody, have you ever been to a city like Boston in the Back Bay? They have all these things available within walking distance because you can't drive around Boston for the most part. Parking's at a premium. You think that somebody's going to move into the Flint in Fall River and not be able to go to some different kind of restaurant or even a regular restaurant? They don't exist there. There's no business. There's no clothing stores. There's nothing. There were 2 clothing stores on South Main. There was a clothing store on Pleasant Street at one time. Because you know what's egregious to me? We all know why that happened. When the mills closed, this city was running fine because everybody had a job and they had money. And they could keep small businesses, the kind that people frequent. Put it in context. I was speaking in the context of attracting people to live in a neighborhood. Not the fact that there wasn't something in that neighborhood, but most of it is vacant. So put it in context. Do you think somebody's going to move? You can walk to numerous restaurants in Boston, in all the neighborhoods. You can walk to anything you want, any kind of food you want. You can do things, and that's why those neighborhoods survive. And that's why those businesses survive. And also people got money in Boston. That's why Fall River survived when we had the mills. But when the mills closed up, did our politicians ever emphasize training the people who were displaced from the mills for jobs, to keep them employed, so we could keep these small businesses in business? We have virtually no small businesses on Pleasant Street that would cater to somebody who wants to have a full-service neighborhood. So, we're going to throw the word egregious around. I'm going to throw it around because my definition of egregious is when we have most of the city council and a mayor, especially a mayor who spent his entire life working in the school department, had 2 terms on the school committee, and is now the chairman of the school committee and the mayor, that can go into work and not look at himself in the mirror and be disgusted where we stand. And the answer is always the same: give us more of your money and we'll fix it. But they never do. All they do is pay them more money to not do anything. There is no accountability. That's what I call egregious. So there's my rant, CJ. You can take it.
There's always something to talk about, isn't there? Oh, it's interesting that we got a couple of comments about the Flint and about the person who had made the comments about it being egregious, and it shows that people are actually watching the show and they have valid opinions that they're basing on facts. Okay, that's the thing. We got to base them on facts. I know we've been attacked by 3 people, 2 elected officials, and 1 busybody, um, saying that we spread false information and whatnot. Anytime a story has come out or information has come out from us that we later found to be wrong, erroneous, or misleading, we corrected that on the following show immediately. We did not waste any time. And believe me, I took many phone calls from Paul Coogan, who picked out one word and said, we're not always doing that. We did that once. Or we're not going to do that. We're always going to do that, or something along those lines. I've always heard, and I took the phone calls, and I got my ear, almost busted because of listening to it. We don't think that what we say is, number 1, wrong, number 2, erroneous, number 3, egregious. And if you can prove it to us, come on the show. We'll let you debate it with us. We love debates. I mean, we love the House of Commons. So, and on this show now, we can have those type of debates. And let us know what you think, or leave it in a comment on what you think. But base it on some facts, base it on some evidence so that we know. And this way, we don't have to take it to the nth degree. Because as our viewer says, they can't handle the truth. And that's the truth.
Well, CJ, listen, I don't want anybody to think that we don't allow them their opinion. If that individual wants to think that the Flint is really okay now and it will attract people, and I know Jeff watches us all the time, and kudos to Jeff and the Flint Neighborhood Association. They've been trying and trying and trying. And they know that putting facades on those buildings and putting lipstick on a pig, they try to get people there. They work for the people of the Flint. And to imply that I'm somehow trying to sugarcoat what the Flint looks like, take a walk. I invite all of you. Drive up, especially the real heart of the Flint. And look at the vacant stores when you get above Flint Street, and look at there's an auto repair shop. But listen, this is not what brings people in. These people are working hard to try to do this. And you know who's caused all this problem because they've ignored it, and with their bullshit that they always spin? Oh, everybody picks on Fall River. It's not that bad. Well, guess what? That's egregious. Because instead of being in the top 10 in crime and the top 10 in poverty, how about us getting to the top 10 in education and in the top 10 in income? How about that? And all those pieces of dead wood that have been sitting in those chairs in the city council for all these years should be voted out. Just like Paul Coogan should be. Paul Coogan's been in office for 2 years. He's never had a definitive plan for anything, and all they do is they're serial deniers. Oh, crime isn't that bad. Shut up. Don't talk about it. Well, if it's not that bad, why don't you give us the stats? Well, sure. They don't talk about the educational system. All they keep saying is, give us more money. Give us more money. Give us more money. Well, for what? What do we got? 6 assistant superintendents of schools? What does Paul want? Maybe if we get 12, education will get better. That's egregious. How about bouncing 5 out of the 6 assistant principals and let the superintendent, let the superintendent of schools, who's getting over nearly $250,000 and over that with benefits, do his job or her job right now, and he can have an assistant, but 5. Why not take those salaries and benefits and hire 10 or 12 teachers to reduce class size? And maybe incorporate some working educational programs. They never talk about that in the school committee. All they ever talk about is getting more money and creating new jobs and giving everybody a pay raise. When's the last time that in every school committee meeting they gave the rate where we stand in the state and how many underperforming schools we have? They don't want to talk about that, just like crime. That's the Fall River con, the Fall River political con. We don't talk about it. And if they talk about it, we deny it. Don't listen to them. Don't listen to them. They're spreading misinformation. Look out for those people. You know, the guy that got shot in both legs, they made that up. Paul Coogan jumping out of his car and screaming at a woman, behaving like a thug. They made that up too. Even if it's on video. They must have made up the video. It's AI. They'll come up with something. How about electing people who say we're not going to rest until we have full accountability on how we spend our money, and we want to move not from the bottom in every good category, we want to go to the top in every good category, like education and public safety. That, to me, is egregious, and you have a right to think everything's fine in Fall River. But I think most people, not the people who support Paulie, not the ones that got plenty of money, not the ones who live in areas where there's no crime yet, they think everything's fine. But I'll tell you something, and there's Jeff, and again, kudos to you and the Flint Association. You guys, you know, Carlos Caesar's been working for forever. Jeff's there. Those people are trying. And I understand how frustrating it is because it's like shoveling shit against the tide. Because this city has a government that is unresponsive to the people. They're only responsive to the people who are politically connected and who have money. Back to...
It's always about political favors. That's for sure. It's always about political favors. And, you know, the thing is, you know, as you said, we always hear that Fall River's lousy, Fall River's the dump, Fall River's this. It's not Fall River that's the problem. It's elected officials. The elected officials create the environment that we live in. They create the environment that we, you know, are sustained in. Because we're not even living. We're only sustained. And this is what you've got to take under consideration. If you can't get what you need to find a way to get it. And if getting it means getting rid of every city councilor, every school committee member, and the mayor, then that's what we do. That would be a revolution. And then that change might work for Fall River. Let's give the new people a shot because the old people haven't done anything to change. As a matter of fact, they keep beating up the city every time you turn around. And even Paul turns around. He will not accept a legal vote. A legal vote said no on the sale of the Bank Street Armory. So what's he do? He sends it back to the city council. Joe Camara is a douchebag. Joe Camara should have never put that back on the agenda. It had already been decided. And the only people that can file for a reconsideration is the people on the prevailing side. And guess what? According to the rules, there is no prevailing side. Therefore, there's no reconsideration. Therefore, the vote should stand. But Andrew Raposa says, oh no, I need a return on investment. I need a return on, show me what the return on investment's going to be. You don't need a return on investment. You just need to be sure that you can pay for the maintenance of the building, which we can do. We've got the money for that. We've even got the money to rehab the building. They want to stay, they don't. No, but remember, we're gonna have another situation like the police station, which by the way is in today's paper saying that we're gonna have to knock it down. There's another great thing you've done, Paul. We're gonna knock down the police station. Granted, it's not all your fault. Many mayors before you have had the problem, but guess what? You take the credit for the things you didn't do, but the things that you have done, you don't want the credit for. Or you don't want the credit for what others have done in failure, and you don't want that credit. Well, guess what? You got to take it from somewhere. You can't.
Well, CJ, listen, Andrew Raposa, that was the most ridiculous statement I ever heard. We want a return on the investment. How about returning a return on the investment for the people of Fall River? How about egregious conduct of saying the reason we can't have the armory is we can't maintain buildings? Why not? Because you don't hold people accountable. This is not a private entity, Andrew. This is not a for-profit organization. Government exists to work for the people and provide them with essential services, not make a profit. The return on the investment should be the return to the people, and turning it over to a market rate developer who's going to force more people out of their homes is not a return. You have proven that you do not belong in that chair, and that was reinforced by the fact that you were endorsed by Paul Coogan. Because now we all know you're a rubber stamp. You're just another rubber stamp. And for people to go, oh, you guys are all, we're not, listen, CJ, you could have moved out of Fall River. They offered you a boatload of money for your house.
That's right.
I could have got a boatload of money for my house. But I've chosen to live here my entire life. I could have moved out years ago. I care about this city. I came back here when I got out of the military. A lot of people go other places because I saw a lot of the world when I was in the military. I could have moved down south. I was stationed down there for a while. But no, I came back to Fall River. And I know I came back to Fall River. I still live in the neighborhood I grew up in. So don't tell me I'm negative. I'm just realistic. Because you people love to label everybody. Oh, egregious. Oh, negative. Oh, yeah, purveyor of misinformation. Well, the people who like to label them are the people who are the biggest hypocrites. Like now, Biden's building a wall. Oh, the border was fine. 10,000 people a day. Everything is fine. There's no inflation. Oh, of course not. Listen, that's the problem. And you know what the problem is, people? You don't go out and vote. When Paul Coogan can get elected in an election where there's 10,000 people showing up, he's got 7,500 people he gave a job to. He's always going to win an election like that. You got to get to the polls. You got to get to the polls. When we had the recall, how did we bounce a mayor that got in by over 70% of the vote? We turned out nearly 17,000 people for that election. People came because they wanted a change. It's time again to change. And it doesn't have to be the perfect candidate. Give people a chance. Because I can tell you one thing, our government isn't working. This is the worst I've ever seen it. And that's saying something because Coogan in 2 years has done zero for the people of Fall River. He has not delivered a safer city, a better educational system, or a plan for anything. His plan is to farm it out. And that's the way it is. And it's look, the burden is on us. If you don't get out and vote, and I don't say throw them all out. If you've got somebody that's working for you, you keep them there. That's and Michelle Dion has worked for us. That's probably the only city councilor that's sitting in a seat that I'm going to vote for. But all their friends are going to come, and all their connected people. They got a cabal. They're running a ticket. In case you haven't noticed, they're running a ticket. Paul Coogan and friends on the school committee end, and we've got somebody coming back who helped cover up Malone, and he'll probably get in. But the reality is, we do have the power to change it. Instead of 10,000 people coming out, let's have 20,000. Let's have 30,000. We did have a time, and CJ can speak to this. It's great to be here on a holiday and run over a half an hour. I love it. But the reality is that there was a time when we had 65, 70% turnouts in elections. That's when you truly know what the people want. This is not government by the people. It's government by the connected. And it's the people's fault. If you're apathetic, and you're upset, it's because you're being not participating. Come out and vote. Let's show them that we're upset. And I know people have a difficult time sometimes, but now you can mail in ballots and stuff. The reality is, you have to vote. And if you don't have to, when 10,000 people come out, it is not truly what the people want. And I know what the word acquiescence means if you want to throw out sesquipedalians, but people are not acquiescing. They're just disgusted and feel there's nothing more they can do about it, but there is. And that's why we keep shouting from the rooftops. Over to you, CJ.
Well, I mean, I don't know if you read that comment that Scott Donnelly thought that the 2014 recall was going to be the start of holding our elected officials accountable. He says, WTF happened. Well, I'll tell you what happened. The people became apathetic again. They got all riled up, and then all of a sudden, there was no more incentive for them to get out there and hold people accountable. When the incentive was already there, they made the incentive. But they figured it was over and done with, and that was their Christmas gift, and they were done. We need to be sure that we
I
have
was just going to interject, CJ,
Go ahead.
before, yeah, just to get Scott. I'll tell you why, Scott. Because what happens is historically, people wait till it's gone to DEFCON 5 before they do anything. They wait till something's totally destroyed. They should have realized after that their power. But like CJ said, what they do is they say, well, this guy pissed us off so much we bounced him, so that's great. And then they go back and they, like CJ said, they get apathetic. And then they wait until this becomes Detroit or we go into receivership, then everybody will have a revolution. That's when revolutions normally occur, when things have gotten so bad, the next step is eradication of the community. And it shouldn't get to that. What they should have learned from 2014 was that we have power, and let's do it again. So, CJ, that's it. Back to.
I think you said that very clearly. We have power, and we do have power. The problem is you're not exercising it. You've got to exercise your power. You've got to exercise your authority. Remember, these people are supposed to represent you. Our Constitution says so. Part of the first, Article 5, says they are a substitution. They are not the be all end all. They are not the all powerful. They think they are. Once they get in those seats, for some reason, their brains turn to mush, and they only do what they're told to do by the administration. And that's wrong. Listen to the people. Remember, one voice sometimes equals 10,000 voices. So if you have one person saying, keep that building, that could be 10,000 people saying, keep that building. If you have two, that could be 20,000. If you have five, that could be 50,000. I mean, that's the way they look at it when they're doing the ratings, when they're doing polling. One person represents so many voters in polling. One person represents so many viewers in ratings. That's the way it works, because you can't get a read on every single person in the city. You have to kind of pigeonhole them and say, okay, this guy here represents this one. This woman here represents this group. This woman here represents that group. And you have to take what they say worthwhile. Now, I know that when people keep thinking about their mayoral candidates, they keep jumping back to the trash fee with Sam. And Sam has made it clear several times to people that that trash fee became necessary because he had to make a choice between laying off police and fire or adding the trash fee. He does believe now that he was listening to the wrong people. But as he said, he took it to the neighborhood associations. And the neighborhood associations said they were okay with that. And so the neighborhood associations did not represent the people, didn't represent their neighborhoods properly. I don't know why, but it happens. Most neighborhood associations do represent the voice of the neighborhood. But again, we're in that situation. It was another weird skeeve. It was a weird time. People were feeling powerful, then they weren't feeling powerful. So they felt, well, you know what, we'll take the trash fee instead of laying off police and fire, which I firmly believe, had that message been perfectly and clearly communicated to the people, there would have been a different outcome in that election, because the people would have said, hey, I'm dealing with an $8 million shortfall from the Flanagan administration. I got to find the money to keep police and fire. Where am I going to get it from? And this is it. And maybe the people would have said, okay, that's great. Not sure. But it is what it is.
Well, CJ, I'll just quickly add, we can wrap this up, but and on this holiday. So, just to give Andrew Raposa a little insight with this comment, we got to get a return on this thing. Andrew, you better really learn how to look at the actual way a government works. You're not running a private school here. You're running. This is the government. We get no return if you send it to that developer. We lose money, and I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to give you a little explanation. Because he's going to get that. He's going to get a TIF. He's going to get money. He's going to get all kinds of taxpayer money subsidizing him while he lines his pockets. So we're not going to make any money on that. What he pays in taxes, we're going to pay most of it because they're going to give him all kinds of tax breaks. Get your head out of your derriere. That's not the way it works. And you will vote for a TIF for him. And you will give him extra money for everything he does. And what are you going to use for an excuse? Oh, we're going to get a return? When he's getting his taxes abated and everything else, while the homeowners and the renters in this city get their backs broken? You are not working for the people, Andrew, and I will say it publicly, and you know me, I'm not bashful. When I run into you, I tell you the way it is. You've lost my vote, mister.
I'm not sure we know where you stand, Chip. Well, I want to thank you all for watching. As was said earlier in the comments, happy Indigenous Persons Day, happy Columbus Day, happy whatever day you want to call it. Remember, stay safe, stay angry, and hold your politicians accountable. We'll see you on Wednesday. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.